Gov, I know you're a huge fan of the theory of DFS and like going through the process of DFS and working through the theories and the concepts and the reason we build things. And I know Donnie fell in love with like building a lineup just for like our uniquenesses. And for people who haven't watched our NFL shows, we love to kind of go through different lineup builds and different constructions with this kind of pillar mindset of like, okay, here's our approaches, here's all the tools, how are we going to make this work? And we have a unique opportunity, and I like to view it as an opportunity. A lot of people want to be defiant one way or the other with the XFL. They want to say like this league's not going to work, or it's going to work for this reason, or it's a terrible idea, or they want to like buy into the gimmick of the World Wrestling Federation, and it's not even called that anymore, and like use the Rock's name to sell it. All I know is I see an opportunity to make money, and I think if we approach it with a smart mindset, like we have been doing with our NFL lineups, I think there is money to be made in this sport. Why don't you guys give me your initial impressions? And they don't even got to be right and wrong. Just give the people like your initial honest transparency, and then we can go from there.
I think it's going to be like just going off what we have for this league so far. It has the name power, I think. I'm worried because I think the USFL was so successful last year that maybe people would want to wait for the USFL. I think the USFL probably is going to give us a better product, but you never know. You got to give it a chance. It wasn't bad last time we saw it, and it only shut down, I believe, because of COVID. So,
correct.
Yeah, that was my thought. Is I think the XFL had a lot more going for it than the USFL. Like, I'll admit, I watched the USFL. I didn't think it was great football, but it did its job. They got through a season. It wasn't bad, but I do think there is more behind the XFL, which is why I think it will have the better talent and the better people in it. Especially since like people in the USFL, just like logistically, if you play in the XFL, you could play in the XFL, be done with the XFL, and still have time to get on a spring training roster. Whereas if you play in the USFL right now, it doesn't start till April. You would be getting done with that league around like training.
We saw it with Turpin. Yeah, we saw it with Turpin.
Yeah, there are guys who can get. But then again, last year the USFL started earlier. They started about this time.
Yeah, they did.
Maybe mid-March. Now they're starting more like near the end of the XFL season. So I think the XFL is in a better spot. And I'm hopeful because there are more names. There is more money behind people. Like that there's more money behind these games. And I remember 2 years ago when it was being shut down right there in COVID, they were having good games. I remember the beer snakes going up. I remember they had a good product.
Gov, can I piggyback off that idea really quickly before we give credence to a host of ours, a sponsor, if you will? We are being hosted by one of our favorite Discord channels and some of our fellow DFS contributors. So I want to shout them out. But I have to first say, like, to speak on how unique this league is and the position it's in, one of the highest I'm thinking DraftKings already. One of the highest paid players in this league was ruled a backup in week 1, and it's just because he came in late. And it's Brett Hundley, who is going to be technically the second quarterback. He has one of the richest contracts, and it's because he was apprehensive at first, but then was sold once he saw some of the products being offered. Now, I do think from a marketability standpoint, they've dropped the ball a bit in terms of like what this could have been or how they could have promoted it. But that might have actually been better not to like overhype it, because I'll just use an example, like the Super Bowl advertisement with Rob Gronkowski and the field goal kick for the Super Bowl. That was promoted as like this live event. It was supposed to be this big thing. And then it turned out that it was live, but it wasn't on location. And there was all this like logistics. And to your point, goes, sometimes we just want to see good football presented in a way that's easily digestible. And sometimes, like, all those gimmicks or all the like anticipation can get in the way. So tonight, what we are going to do is we're going to be transparent. We're going to just tell you what we think, but we're going to be wrong about a lot of things. And I think that's what entices people to play this week because nobody knows anything. Projections are going to be off. Nobody
Like,
knows.
Even more so than normal. Like, for anyone who was playing week 1 with us in NFL, that's the week to take your stand because everything's a little off with a new season, new coaches, new players. This is a whole new league. Everything's like, I have first look projections of myself to be able to run, but do I trust them? No.
Well, you got the trust of the people. Adam's here just to see you, Gov. So he's here to pick your XFL brain. But I think that's also very important is like we're going to pick and choose, and we don't got to be right. I think this week you can win with a 0 in your lineup as long as you're willing to take some chances. And I think that's the number one advice I would give is have your convictions and don't be afraid. Like normally, Donnie, for when you started building lineups for the first time this year with us, we talked a lot about correlation. I actually don't think for the XFL, especially in week 1, that we want to correlate as much. I think it's almost like a showdown where you want to just put the best players in the slots. Like,
well, it's the first week. I think talent will prevail more so than strategy because the teams haven't been together for all that long.
Right. I mean,
knowing the scheme of the coaches so that you know who to play, but that's all you can really do here is like we can kind of know what these coaches like to do,
right?
And then we have the depth charts to say like, okay, this guy likes slot receivers, or this guy likes his secondary, or this guy likes running backs, and we have the depth charts to know who those guys are now. Another thing I like more about the XFL than USFL, I could not get correct depth charts or accurate information on players questionable or inactive. And it made it really annoying to build lineups. It's like I could get all the way to lock and not know until can't do anything else. Can't make any changes. Oh, and now this guy's just not going to play. Like,
right.
At least in NBA, I have a couple of minutes after I get the starting lineup.
True. But
The XFL has been very transparent with that. I think they know. So I like that. It's another reason I trust the XFL to get this done.
Yeah, it's a lot better. Like, you got to remember, The Rock is used to a circus with the WWE and like having to be a circus performer. But people don't understand there's a difference between being the circus and being the circus that's in town. And like the USFL kind of seemed like a circus. They didn't seem to have their stuff together. It kind of seemed thrown together. It kind of seemed jumbled, right? Where when Vince McMahon and his organization rolled into town, which is where The Rock grew up, he kind of got the model. It's like that whole truck was coming in, and they were wrecking shop. They were setting up. They had a plan, and they executed it. And yeah, it had its absurdities, but it all had a method and it all had a reason. One of the things I want to mention that I haven't heard many DFS people talk about, which I think is an interesting wrinkle, that like again, I don't think we think about because it's such an oddity. Did you know that all the teams are practicing in one location? Okay. And then the two teams that are playing each other are flying on the same plane to the designated location in which they're supposed to play the game. So even though you got home teams and away teams, they're arriving at the same time on the same flights, the same day, but they actually practice similar to like MMA where it's like done at their facility and then they're flying out on location the day of the game or a couple days. I think they actually flew out tonight for the games tomorrow, for example. I don't know how many people knew that.
I did not even know that.
So that's the thing.
I don't love that to fly, especially if they're flying out tonight. You know,
I mean,
that could-
that's normal. If they're flying out tonight, no game starts until 3:00 tomorrow.
Right.
Like, so they'll have plenty of time to land, get to a hotel tonight, get your sleep, wake up, go to the venue, get a normal practice in, a warm up, hour and a half, 2 hours before the game's supposed to start. Go back in, coach can talk, all the normal football stuff, and then we get a game.
So do you think there's any advantages or uniquenesses from a player perspective, or even we got to find the smallest edges here, Gov, Donnie, that you think like flying with the same team you're going to be competing with in less than 12, 14 hours? Is there anything we can glean there?
I don't think that's.
I mean, there's probably something to the teams aren't able to practice with each other. Right. They practice in the same town, but they probably all have their own spot facility. They're renting out this high school or whatever to practice in. And then they just leave that area on the same flight and go to wherever the game's supposed to be held.
Correct. I just know that where they practice, like it's almost like the Performance Institute for the MMA, where they have like one central location for all the practices the whole week. And then they're flying out for the games at the designated location. But why don't we get into what exactly and how exactly we go about building the lineups? Is there any big pillars or big statements that you guys would want to stay away from? Is there anything you want to tell the people that we make sure we do? How do you approach that? What's kind of your main takeaways?
Well, I'll say this right off the bat. Because it's week 1, I think pricing's going to be off on guys. They're not going to be priced for what they should be. Guys might be priced as the 4th string wide receiver when the depth chart says they're clearly the number 2 or something. Mm-hmm. So,
speaking of,
I don't think salary is going to be a big deal, but I do think doubling down on the strategies of go for the cheaper running back, go for the pass-catching running back, save your money there, especially since it's a scarce position. You only get one. Sort of the same thing we know in NFL. It's almost always better to try to find that mid-range cheap quarterback that can get you the points and let you pay up for your ceiling wide receiver and skill players. We always like to go with the cheap running back in our NFL builds, but even when we had 2 running backs that you have to play, we would still try to have one of them be a cheap one. So this is more like centers in NBA. You really can only play 1, maybe 2 with the flex, but you should probably prioritize a good, cheaper one that's getting some passing game usage. I think that's a good strategy you can pull from NFL building over to this. Although week 1, you probably don't need to worry that much about salary savings.
Gov, you mentioned usage, and I want to start this off by saying, the Orlando team only has 2 running backs. I talked about oddities, and then we'll transition to coaches and some of these players. One of the oddities that I noticed is only having 2 running backs. You talk about usage. I don't think Martin is the best running back in this league. But when you only have 2, and injuries happen in such a physical game of football, this is definitely an edge that I don't think the casual, even person just throwing $5 on, because they happen to be flipping through the channels tomorrow at about 2:30 are really going to notice. And these are the type of usage things that I think you're speaking to.
Well,
yes.
And with the 2 running back thing, I think it's very interesting that a running back, even if he's not getting the ball every play, it's very hard for a running back to play every single snap of a game.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see such a price discrepancy between 1 and 2 for this team. And
for all we know, it's completely mispriced.
Right. You could imagine at least their backup is going to get some work.
Oh, he has to.
Right. You can't have a running back, even if he's on the field just to block. the backup running back's going to get on the field for this team.
Right, but if he's only on the field to block, he won't get any points. So, like, we do need running backs that are going to get touches, get carries, like we always would want to focus. So I would try to focus that, but I think there will be cheaper running backs to grab. I don't think we need to go with what is probably going to be a starting running back in Abram Smith for DC.
Mhm.
I think there will be plenty of plays from Houston, from Arlington, plenty of good running back plays around. And they won't be like $7K where you can't pay up for your high-priced, high-name wide receivers.
Yeah, let me just speak to another oddity I noticed, like another usage thing, and then we'll get back to if you have any, Gov, or Donnie, if he's noticed any, and then we'll go on to coaching and philosophies, and then we'll go on to some of these marquee players, and then at the end we'll start to build a lineup with some of these philosophies that we've kind of gleaned from. One thing I got to mention is Seattle has no tight ends officially. Like, literally does not believe in the position. They're kind of like the Milwaukee Bucks of basketball, where essentially they believe in uniform play. They're trying to get they have a philosophy, which we'll discuss a bit later, but they believe in their philosophy to the extreme where they like have the most wide receivers. I think they drafted the most wide receivers. They drafted the most highest wide receivers with the top priorities in their draft, but then went no tight ends. So it's a very pass happy offense. And when you talk about DraftKings on the opposite end, we talked about running backs with Orlando. The Sea Dragons literally might pass 85% of the time. Or maybe this is a trap and we're all being fooled, but these are the kind of the bigger stands, the grandiose kind of things that you have to do to be a bit different. I feel like.
Do you think that leads to what some of these wide receivers lining up in the backfield every so often?
100%. 100%. You're going to have to. Whether that's a big wide receiver, whether that's a big running back that has to play the fullback. I mean, whether you see like the wishbone, more screen passes, like you're going to have to replace that run, the run game with that traditional setup in some way. It's going to be different. And whenever there's difference and already a highly variant sport where we don't know anything and projections are hard to lean on, even some of these mainstay, DraftKings centric, DFS centric projection, content sites don't even know how to address this. Run the Sims with Freeman. He literally says, I don't know and that guy literally pounds the pavement probably for football more than anybody. I mean, there's a guy in our Discord named Jay who literally lives and dies for preseason football, who's struggling to find information. And he's like one of the more analytical guys I know.
Once we get week 1 and we actually have some snap counts,
right,
we have a baseline of anything, it'll be so much better. But even as of right now, I agree. We don't know. Could the Sea Dragons just throw it 85, 90% of the time?
Yeah.
They totally could.
And we have more on that in just a few minutes. Why don't we transition then to any outliers that you see, Gov or Donnie? And then if not, we'll get on to the coaching and their philosophies.
Let's see. We touched on Huntley coming in late and not getting the starting job. Perez actually played pretty well, USFL, from what I've seen. Nothing special, but he gets the job done.
Yeah.
So, now, that being said, I think Vegas might be one of the worst teams and end up being one of the bottom teams in this league. Getting Huntley might help. That's a decent name talent. They do have Martavis Bryant at wide receiver and Jeff Bidet and Geronimo out. It looks like Vegas kind of went all out because they probably have the 3 receivers that I know the most.
Yeah.
I've seen them play in the NFL. Geronimo Allison played with Aaron Rodgers. Martavis Bryant played with Ben Roethlisberger. Jeff Bidet has been in multiple different summer and spring league football.
And I just want to pull up, you being a Panthers fan, you might know that they are projected the Vipers to run Lovett as their running back. So, but
Correct.
I think that might actually be good though if they're a bad team for DFS, because that means they're down. We know.
Oh no, that's why like Arlington this week might be a solid play.
Right.
I don't know about Slaughter, but like that would be a good one to like try to play the running backs. Maybe if you know who it's gonna be. But we'll get into that when we go through the games. So
Donnie, let's assume, because I think you've done the least amount of research, right? You're just coming into this blind, right?
And relatively blind, yeah.
Right. I mean, you literally are, but let's just assume you really were coming in blind. You knew the game of football, but you didn't know any of the players, right? And then how would you build a lineup? You would mostly be looking for, you'd be like, give me the resumes, or what would you say? Give me the physique. Like, what's some of the characteristic traits you would look for?
I mean, I would definitely look at past leagues. Like we all know Paxton Lynch hasn't looked great in whenever we've seen him play in the recent 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously that I think he's probably the worst starter in this league. So
even among some of the other guys that you might not even know.
Yeah, I mean he's been really ugly when we've seen him, and I was relatively high.
I'm not going to say you're wrong. I just want to put that out there.
Well, you'd have to be pretty behind and bad to, not at least be at a similar level of Lynch. Like, I don't if you can't at least play to Lynch's level, I don't think you should be in the league at that point at all.
Interesting.
And that team, like this team that with Paxton Lynch, the Guardians, don't have that many great receivers from what I recognize Eli Rogers. I don't recognize many other names from this team. But that doesn't play well to their offensive hand either.
I guess that's the point, though, Donnie. Do you think, and the reason I'm picking your brain here is because I'm trying to get, the casual, I've spent 5 minutes doing
Cody Lattimore as well, I recognize.
Right. Now, he's really cheap. So you spent 5 minutes looking at this. It's about to start. You realize, oh, yeah, well, I got a Super Bowl hangover. I want to watch a little bit of sports. Do we play the more NFL experienced guys like a Josh Gordon, knowing that their ownership is going to be higher, but they have the physical gifted skills? Or do you look for a younger guy with the physique who may be overlooked or underlooked in the NFL? For example, TJ Vasher, I think, played on the practice squad with Dallas the time Ben DiNucci was the quarterback for Dallas. And a guy like Vasher also is the biggest wide receiver in the league at almost 6'7". So at what point do you view experience and NFL talent against the physique or hunger of some of these lesser known guys?
Well, I mean, the only names that I think are I really want to try and shove in there is a Josh Gordon and Martavis Bryant, just because I know those guys can be top end players, even if they're past that point in the NFL. I feel like that talent's got to show up at least, and a quarterback might get desperate and just say, I'm going to throw it up to my best guy.
You know what's funny is I got both of those guys in a lineup construction, but honestly, the best play on the board, it hasn't even been mentioned yet, in my opinion. I think the guy who's going to score the most points, I'll mention him when we build our lineups, so you guys have to stick through to see who that is in just a few minutes. I want to shout out, though, we have 4 people concurrently watching. If you guys want to drop comments, questions, we don't know, and that's kind of the fun part is we can bounce ideas off of each other and try and all get there, we can all take this journey together. And at the end of the day, somebody's going to win a lot of money because week 1 is kind of when they're going after the prize pools, the biggest pools. But I think week 2 and 3 are going to be like also very fun, creative ways to build up, to your point, because then we'll start to have the larger football picture. So maybe the prize pools won't be as big, but the football-minded individuals, the people that really grind, the preseason are going to really start to take advantage because we're going to actually not be playing a guessing game. We're actually going to be playing football at that point with football videos and highlights and usage and different things like that. We'll actually have something to go off of.
Agreed.
I'm very interested to see snap counts. Once we start to get snap counts, even just for one game, that completely is a huge game changer for us.
Well, especially targets too, for a site like
well, that's always what we've targeted too.
Right.
So many stats. There's so many stats. Air yards. Can I get air yards? Who's actually chucking it down the field? Oh God! Like all of these things would be amazing stats to get, and we'll start getting them week 2. We'll get all the stats we want to make it real DFS. So this is week 1. This is where you have to take your stand, especially in this new league.
Correct.
So if you want to say just play your stars, we'll get Josh Gordon and Martavis Bryant in the lineup.
That's what I find interesting about this, though. Like, we don't know really anything going into this, but we can kind of pick and choose where the talent is.
I was about to say, we do know a few things, and we can get into that here next.
Please do. Take it away, Gov. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, now's the good time. So let's go team by team. Let's talk, Logan. Let's go. Give me what you know about the coaches, and then I'll go through the depth chart. You can pull up the depth charts for the teams. We can go through them.
So I'll have the coach available. So whichever team you guys want to break down first.
We'll just start on DraftKings. So let's start with Vegas. Yep. Pull up the depth chart sheet. So I got them. Let's let everyone should see them.
Yep.
All right.
Vegas Vipers head coach Rod Woodson. I think this is the most interesting coach.
This looks like the most stacked team to me.
See, with the coach like Rod Woodson, he played so long ago. I wonder if he wants to give that play style to the league. But then you bring in a quarterback late like Brett Hundley, and maybe you want to just be that offensive team. I think Hundley's got not the most talent out of all the quarterbacks here, but he's definitely one of the more talented ones. He has a history of playing, at least meaningful football lately. In a league where not many quarterbacks' name power will shine out early, this is a bigger one for sure.
I hate to do this, but I have to step away for just a moment, but keep going, guys.
No problem. I mean, so to my point, on top of that, the guy they're starting until Brett Hundley learns the system is Luis Perez. I've seen him in the USFL. I saw him I believe he's in the USFL. He started 9 of the 11 games, or no, he played in 9 of the 11 games, started 6 of them. In those games, 70+% completion percentage, 9 touchdowns, 1 interception. He's not going to kill you if he gets you there. He's just not super. He wasn't really taking a lot of downfield shots. I will say that. So he's more of a dink and dunk kind of guy, but he can hit those dinks. 70% completion is pretty solid. That's going to be efficient getting things downfield. And if he can do that to playmakers like his former NFL wide receivers in Martavis Bryant and Geronimo Allison, he might actually be able to do something.
Right.
Or maybe Huntley comes in with some running ability and is able to do it week 2, or who knows.
But I think those quarterback play styles are very different as to where.
Oh yeah, one is a pure statue game manager, and then Huntley will have the rushing ability, which is why they probably need a week to get him situated into the offense. If they've been building an offense around Perez I was about to say, if they've been building an offense around Perez up until now, they probably need a week to implement Huntley stuff anyway.
But I think it's very interesting. Like, you go from a dink and dunk game manager with a defensive coach to now you can be a more aggressive team with this quarterback.
Yeah, that's why I think Huntley will play week 2, no matter what. They'll figure out how to get him his plays. He'll learn how to hit his stuff in all of these offenses.
I think Martavis Bryant's definitely the most interesting name in this league right now.
Yeah, can I make my point? I was listening the whole time. So a thing that we haven't touched on that I think everyone knows, but sometimes, especially like with my job or teaching or any obvious job that you ever do or a task, sometimes we try to overcomplicate things to seem smart, or like, well, I want to prove that I'm the best bartender, so I'm going to make the best drink. But sometimes the old-fashioned is the reason you have your classics. And one thing we know about Rob Woodson is he used to play for the Raiders. I believe he used to coach even for the Raiders as a positions coach, similar to what Reggie White's doing right now with the Colts. So, and then Martavis Bryant used to play with the Raiders. So when you see these correlations in a league where we don't know very much, in a league where there's a lot of unpredictability, sometimes you just got to keep it simple, stupid. And for me, it's like the coach knows the player. The coach and the player have, similar football backgrounds, similar football environments. We know Brian has the talent. I think Brian has the talent and one of the more younger players with NFL experience, because Josh Gordon is over 30. So even though he has the NFL experience, when you're over 30, I mean, at some point, that's going to diminish. I think Bryant, for that reason, Donnie, you mentioned it, is a great play, but for a reason that people haven't talked about. Like that correlation between coach and player does matter, especially when you're looking at small edges.
Well, interesting that you mentioned he used to play for the Raiders. The Raiders moved to Vegas. Now he's playing for a team in Vegas.
Right.
Just a small thing.
Like those things matter. I'm telling you, like when we're looking at small edges.
I agree. That's something you look at and like maybe he has this weird chip on his shoulder because all these players, they're competitors. They want things to motivate themselves. Mm-hmm. If he's a self-motivator and that's what he's looking for, it could work.
Gov, what else do we know about Rob Woodson that we can glean? Because that was my biggest takeaway. Like, I know Brian's the most talented receiver potentially in this league, but also he has that relationship not only with the coach, but like the area, the mindset. A lot of these same, players are environments are going to translate. You're going to get a lot of Raiders that come to this game.
Well, this team in particular has some of the most star power, I think, in the league. Like even on defense, this is the team with big Vic Beasley. Yeah, he's one of the main defensive guys I know in this league. So
Vic Beasley is so fast and athletic. I think he could play safety or corner in this league. I'm not even playing with you. Like I
don't disagree.
From an athletic standpoint, I feel like he's the most athletic.
Yeah, so like this team has all the talent to be the best team in the league. Something tells me that it's just not gonna be. I don't know why.
I don't like their running game at all.
Rod Smith, Lovitz, I know from Panthers fan, like he's not a great running back.
He's not,
but he's okay.
And if I remember right, Rod Smith was from the Cowboys, more of a fullback kind of build.
I believe he was also he was in the USFL last year. I forget for which team, but he didn't actually start for them.
So his yards per carry average have just been bad. Like he's not even a thumping kind of back. It's like he's a big guy that doesn't like to get hit. It's almost similar to basketball where like he has the height, but he's international big, but he also doesn't have the Dirk Nowitzki kind of shooting touch. Yeah. So it's like he's stuck in a no man's, no man's zone. And I think that's why the younger Levitt kind of took over the job.
And I just want to say, to chime in on what Jason commented, I would 100% agree with that opinion. That's the thing, though. You really want to look at, outside of like the gaudy numbers, more so the targets is what you're going to like, what we're probably going to be looking at for going after week 1, or who's on just on the field in general. I'm sure there will be some injuries that happen. Hopefully as little and light as possible, but it is football at the end of the day. So,
and Jay, Easter's right around the corner too. You don't even want always chicken eggs. Sometimes we gotta embrace that some of these might be filled with caramel and chocolate eggs. I mean, like, just because we're using the word football doesn't mean that it's an amateur league, or doesn't mean that it has to compare to the NFL. There's a chance to make money, and so all we can do is take what we have and apply it. And you do a really good job of this, being so analytical, as I know Jay for a while now, that I feel like people like you especially can validate this in week 1. And I hope we all make money. But more than anything, I hope we all have fun with it and we do enjoy it, because like, I don't think this product's going to be any worse than like MAC football, for example, Joe.
No, I would agree. Like, I have high hopes. I had high hopes for USFL. It didn't fit what I wanted, but it did at least what I thought it would do. It got through its league and showed that it could actually sustain if you do it right. And I think the XFL will do it right.
Jay, what do you think about my Martavius Bryant take, the correlation between coach and player and just like the environment? Because I think those are the small edges that might go under like to the casuals that won't be for, people like you, me, Gov, Donnie, and the rest of the hardcore football fans. Or maybe this is just like a live golf situation where it's like, we talk like there's a lot of casuals that are going to watch this, but let's face it, it's all the hardcore tailgaters that are always, the same in the parking lot, and we just create this community where like we all eat off each other. That could also happen this weekend too, if we're being fair.
Agreed. I say we go on to the next team. So that is, I believe, the Arlington Renegades.
It is. I like to flash the depth chart we got up from Jay earlier, and then we can go on to the Renegades. It is them indeed.
Yep.
Yep. Bob Stoops is their coach.
Good old Bob.
Yeah, this one's interesting, and I'll leave this one off since I let you guys last time. So everyone assumes that Bob Stoops is going to be a pass-happy guy because that's what he did in college. But I actually think this is going to be a more balanced approach. And, we're not going to see the running quarterback with Kyle Slaughter. He's kind of like similar to Luis Perez. He might be, like structurally, traditionally a quarterback build, but I would lean to a more athletic style of quarterbacks in this league. And I don't even know if Kyle would make it through the first half. I'm going to be honest. I have a very tight player pool when it comes to quarterbacks, and I'm crossing some of these quarterbacks off the list. I'm not playing any quarterbacks in this game. Anything you want to glean from this? Like, I think this game has one of the more recognizable coaches, I guess. And I think everyone's going to assume they know, Bob Stoops, I know him from, Oklahoma. This is what's going to happen. And I just think this could be the biggest trap game. It's also the first game of the day, which could also be its own trap. I don't like the quarterback options, or really the offensive options in this game.
I mean, I know LeBlanc is a great athlete on their corner side, and they have a good punter. So this might be.
I was about to say, I know their punter. I know this guy. This guy I know, Marquette.
I miss Marquette King.
Oh God, this guy.
Yeah, but
there's your star power for the Renegades.
But let's talk about that insincerity. You guys are mostly talking about it because I'm assuming his dance moves and his kind of viral.
But he was also a very good punter. when he played for the Raiders.
Also because like I look at the rest of it and like I know of Jordan Smallwood and like I've seen Sal Cannella in the USFL as a solid tight end, but they don't have any like flashy wide receivers on this team.
Cannella was, I think, a top 3 draft pick in this league. Like, they are not using him like a tight end. He is Travis Kelce-like for this offense. I would believe so, given the draft capital they've invested in him, given his profile. I believe his performance in the USFL got him on a Green Bay practice squad this offseason. So, like, literally he's gotten noticed before. So, but I want to go back to your King point, because this is another point where I feel like a lesser known podcast like us that really have to dig through these edges. You guys probably know him again from the viral sensation, the dance moves, the name. Let's not pretend that field position won't matter in this sport, where it's like offenses and close games might be the way we see it, because there might not be a terribly great efficiency. Like, we saw the Super Bowl be pretty damn efficient, like one of the more efficient games we've ever seen. These kind of like up in the air leagues, field position could be huge. So like, we joke about the punter being a big deal, but it really might be a big deal.
No, that wasn't a joke. I was being serious when I think it's very important.
I'm glad you were being authentic, because like, I
know he can bomb that ball, and I know he can consistently pin a team down.
Yeah.
And I noticed a name like LeBlanc on the defensive end side of it. And, you know, there are athletes in this league, obviously. It's not all about athleticism. But somebody who I think is an above average athlete at a professional level, you know, that's important when you're fighting field position and you're going and getting that talent on the defensive end.
It is true also, Jay. He was in the XFL and the USFL. I just want to mention he's been in all 3 in like the last couple years.
Extremely solid. Like I know these names from watching these leagues, and that's like he's the one guy I know. I've heard of Jordan Smallwood. This is a team where you could throw a dart maybe at a wide receiver if you think they're going to be throwing.
Yeah.
Because I also have never really heard of Devon Smith or Keith Ford. I think I've heard of Keith Ford, but I also like that it's Keith Ford. How many Keith Fords are there in the actual world?
Devon Smith was the guy that was going to play in the USFL who got in trouble for the pizza incident. He played his collegiate football at Michigan.
I think I remember that guy now. Okay,
he's a big body. He's a big body thumper. But like, even his talent isn't going to be breakaway. He's got to get in the green zone. He's got to be in that money making zone, probably to pay off his salary even as a running back. And again, it comes on to usage. So who coaches this team, and what can we glean from them? Is there anything you want to take away? So we know it's Bob, right? Like, we know the name, but like, what does that mean for professional football? Because he's never coached professional football, and we can make all the jokes we want that this is like an extension of college. But there is a step up, I think. Like, we are talking about grown men here.
The coaching style is different. You have to be talk to these players differently. You know, they're not kids. They're not going to listen to all the things that you'd be able to say in college. Stoops did coach in the last XFL.
He did.
Yeah. So we definitely could look at that and take some notes on how he wanted to do it, but it's a different team. Yeah. So it could be a completely different style.
And to be totally transparent, the reason I'm mixing up the USFL and the XFL so often was because the XFL didn't even get through a full season with the COVID, and then the USFL took right over. So like, if I mix those up, just know I'm talking about the springtime leagues. But I don't know, Griff. Maybe I'm giving them too much credit, but I do not think this is exactly like college. I do think there's a step up. Like I say, we're talking about grown men here. So
they are now like they're doing this for the money. They're doing this for the chance to like keep in shape, show off.
Right.
This is all second shot. So like guys are hungry.
And
when guys are hungry, guys usually are better than they are when they're not.
right.
Let's just say that.
And
In layman's terms, yes.
can we also be honest about another thing? Like maybe this isn't the time and place, but it came top to mind, so I got to mention it now. The USFL was kind of a shit show in the way that it was played in one location. It was thrown together during like a weird time, COVID. People were leaving. You know, this was backed by The Rock. This was established way before The Rock. So like this has some name value, whether we think that cachet is like monopoly money or an actual $1 million, like it has some reputation. So I do think that we're going to see the best version of a springtime league. And if the USFL can survive, I think this one could thrive. And why don't we speak on some of these more players and philosophies as we continue on here, and then we can get on to building a lineup. So go ahead and take away any other positions you want to mention on Arlington before we move on to the next team.
No, I think we got through them pretty good. Let's go on to the next game. So we start with Orlando. I got the depth chart up. Sorry for the small depth chart, people.
Some people don't even have a depth chart. So the fact that we were able to do this with the help of Jay, with the help of Gov, and just our community, like find a community and then dive in as hardcore as you can, because that's what it's going to take to win a slate like this.
Terrell Buckley, head coach.
Yeah, this one's odd. I'm going to let you guys start because I got a bunch of oddities with this one. So I don't want to seem like a negative Nancy, but I got a lot of like questions with this team.
You should be able to zoom into it.
No, I've been trying to get that going. I'd have to like crop it, and actually I might be able to just do that real quick. Hold on.
You know who also
just do Control Plus and it will zoom in.
You know who also has to zoom in on things?
The equal sign. What was that, Logan?
You know who also has to zoom in on things? Old people. And I'm sorry to say, but we're dealing with a first-time head coach at any real substantial level. And then they go and hire an offensive coordinator who's never been a head coach, but he's 71 years old. Now,
yeah, that's really weird.
Maybe I'm totally wrong on that. And if I am, probably will, because no one will notice because this like hasn't got established yet. And maybe that's its own fault. But you have no coaching experience, so we don't know what to really expect from you. I think you like coach, like running backs at like some max score or something. And then you're going to hire a 71-year-old who's like only had position coaching experience. It's just a weird team. They only have 2 running backs, which we mentioned before. This might be the time where we target the defense against them. Is there anything?
Especially if they're going to try to run all 3 quarterbacks. Like that's.
Yeah, all 3 quarterbacks are.
That just screams the team that I want to run my defense against.
Now, Gov, I'm sure you went to high school before, like you went to like these school dances, and rumors get spread, right? So maybe we don't see the 3 quarterbacks. But the fact that it was even mentioned as a possibility, with these 2 guys having the lack of like professional experience that they have, I don't know what the hell is going on. Truly, Donnie, is that a good thing for DFS? Is that a bad thing? Is that a thing? Like, what do you do with that information?
Well, I mean, it just reminds me a lot of just like the awkward Jeff Saturday hire. Why? It made not much sense at the time. It's weird. It's weird to make that decision, especially for a league that needs like consistency. I think that's what's going to be most important. Consistency. Are we really want to put the risk of the brand on that? I don't know. I think it's strange.
are they just punting like week one, like it's preseason? Like, is there any advantage? Like, is this like one of the things where we're just because like I used to coach high school basketball, right? And so like sometimes there'd be a couple of players that were, questionable, or they'd be sick, or they'd have the flu or whatever. And you kind of play that flu game mentality where it's like, I don't know if this star player is going to play. We could be using this guy, and then that changes the whole minutes rotation for a basketball team. Are they doing this whole like we're going to use 3 quarterbacks so you don't know which one to prepare for, or they like what's happening here, Coach?
I have no idea. I just that right there. It's like, okay, all right, what? All right. I'm good.
Well,
let me look at the rest of the team and see if there's any merit to doing some stuff. So it's like Cody Lattimore, know his name. Don't know any of these other guys. I feel like I know Dantes Bird. That's a name I feel like
You're probably thinking of the Bird.
No, I know Demir Bird, but I feel like Dantes was like, I feel like I saw him in college somewhere, but I cannot think about where the college is.
I believe he got a cup of coffee with your Panthers as well.
I know Demir Bird did, but like maybe he might have. That might be where it is. He just didn't mark our practice squad.
I think he got a cup of coffee, and there's nothing to sneeze at with that. Like Shepard, who I don't know if we've talked about it or not, used to play for the Green Bay Packers, who could have like a Turpin-like impact because of his speed and just like being known for one skill set. Like that's the thing about this. Like too, if you're known for one thing and you're good at that, you could really exceed very well in that. Now, I got to mention one player that I think has the potential to be like a slate breaker, and not this team. It's for Houston, so I'll wait. But I don't like anything from Orlando outside of the usage of the running backs. I think if they truly only activate 2 running backs, I think you got to strongly consider playing one of them. Do you not?
I mean, it seems likely. Like if they only are going to use the 2, and they're not the team that we think is going to throw like 70+% of the time, so I would definitely think that one of them is probably going to be used. I mean, they're going to be used. It's just are they able to pull it off?
So can we just put in Martin in our lineup then?
I mean, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
We might start with that.
Let's finish break down the team. I think.
Fair enough.
Calm down, Logan. Calm down.
I'm sorry, but when you only have 2 running backs on your roster, but then your starting running back has 3 names, like there's something wrong there. Like this team just like I almost want to think this is like a scary movie kind of scenario. Is this a joke, or that like what's happening with this?
I don't know. What's better, 3 names or name alliteration? Because they got that with both guys. This guy's Maine Martin, the other guy's Devin Darrington.
Oh man, I'm telling you,
you got the D.
My thing with this team, though, like you have 3. If you're not willing to name your starting quarterback, like definitively, and not say that I definitively trust this guy to the rest of the league, and you don't have running backs, what is happening here? That doesn't make sense.
Donnie, it'd be one thing if you were like, we're the Saints, and we have Jameis Winston, who's going to be our quarterback traditionally, and then we have Taysom Hill, or we have a Tim Tebow package, and then we have a Jordan Love pack. This team literally says like, we're going to use all 3 of them, and we're not even going to define their roles. Like that's my thing is they're not even role players; they're just like quarterbacks. It's like
right,
okay.
It makes no sense to me. Like, what are you going to do on offense if you can't? If you don't have enough running backs and you don't trust any? To me, if you can't name your quarterback, you don't trust your quarterback.
Exactly. So, like, I think, like, Martin looks like fine to play. All that looks like good tournament plays to me in my mind.
I gotta mention.
Let's go on to the next team. Honestly,
well, I gotta mention quickly. Cody Lattimore signed with the Orlando Guardians very late in the process. Actually, one of the few players on the roster who has NFL experience, played for the Denver Broncos, big body. Also, I believe played at Michigan State. So, like, big body, has NFL experience, and super cheap. Could be playing
I
tight
think
end,
he's looked decent in the NFL too.
and he could be playing two positions for this team, tight end and wide receiver. They have him listed at both on different depth charts and different websites. So, like, versatility is definitely the name of the game when it comes to something like this. It's a name that could go under the radar in terms of projections, just because the projection models might even get confused where to put him positionally. But go ahead, Gov. You're right. Let's get this moving.
Oh wow, yeah. Honestly, like, I have my preliminary projections, but I haven't started looking at ownership. But like, wow, Martin looks like one of the two guys everyone's going to run at running back. But it makes sense if they only have two running backs. You should be playing him. So that's more like your chalky running back right there with Martin. If we put him in, we might not be able to play some of the more flashy name wide receivers, because those guys are going to be the guys everyone picks. Everyone's going to want to play Bryant. Everyone's going to want to play Josh Gordon. So
maybe
we might not be able to play Martin with both of them.
Maybe you just play the secondary guy then.
Might be. But we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
Let's go on to the next team.
We're already at an hour, so we
Houston.
gotta.
Yeah, let's burst through this, because I want to build some lineups with you guys. Let's do this. So Houston was next, right?
Right.
I got the Roughnecks up.
Wade Phillips. Perfect name for a team coached by Wade Phillips, I think.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we give like our best 1 to 2 sentence recap on the teams, and then we can build some lineups. Is that fair?
Sure.
Yeah, that's fine.
Just while we're giving our 1 or 2, just put up the depth charts so that everyone can get I want everyone to get a look
Is
at
that
them.
Cole McDonald?
Okay, I think it might be all. Yes, it is.
It is. Okay.
So here's what I'll say. My initial two-liner here. Brandon Silvers, the most underrated, most talented quarterback that nobody knows about in this league. He is limited mobility-wise, but probably has the best completion of the arm between accuracy and strength, in my opinion. I think this kid has moxie. I think he's a good play. I'll say quickly that I don't like any of the receiving options on this team, so that makes Silvers hard for me to play. I love their running back. This is one of the missed prices from DraftKings. This is the starter, even though DraftKings has him listed as the secondary back. So these two outliers, like Silvers not being a recognizable name, but if you've, again, followed spring football, you know him. He's efficient. He's very good. Those are some of the takeaways I have. Go ahead. If anyone else has anything else to add. With you.
Garrett Owens at tight end actually is fine for me with him. Like, if you wanted to play Silvers, I like Owens. I also think Max Borghi is probably going to be, again, probably one of the more higher owned running backs.
Logan, we do have a comment from Jay about Garrett Owens, if you want to hit on that.
I think Owens is the only tight end too.
No, well, there was a little bit more recent.
Holly would probably be good. See, like Holly's a good, like, he'd be the running back to play. Yes,
right, because Holly was a pass catcher, I believe, to Jay's point. But that's also why Max is considered a play, because Houston likes to use their running backs out of the backfield, and again, like, we're going to be wrong about this stuff, but I think this is one of the things where you can get a 0 in your lineup. Just build it for purpose. That's all I'm trying to do, is build a lineup with purpose. Speaking of purpose, let's go on to more purpose and conversation. Donnie, what's kind of your takeaways you got here?
I mean, with a team like this, there's not much I have to say personally until I see them. For me, I have to see something before I'm gonna want to put all this into one basket and say, okay, this is what I think. Even knowing that someone like Josh Gordon's in there, I don't trust any of the league stuff. Josh Gordon might not play for in 5 weeks. So I don't know. Things like that.
I was about to say, let's move on to the next team.
Yeah.
Make sure we can get through this. Okay, so now we're on to the St. Louis Battlehawks. There's another couple names like A.J. McCarron. Yeah. Brian Hill used to play for Atlanta. Good, solid back.
Anthony Becht, head coach.
Marcel Atman. Tell me about. I've heard of Darius Shepard. Not the same Darius Shepard as I believe. No, it's not the same one from the Giants, but it's a different one.
So Atman played for the Raiders. I believe he's young enough, hungry enough. I think this is the best play on the slate. I think this is where you want to eat the chalk. If he is chalky, and this is why, because everyone knows Bryant. Everyone might know this guy because he has the pedigree as well, but he's more expensive than Bryant. So people are going to use that price analysis and be like, well, I know both of the guys. I'm just going to take the cheaper one. With this guy he can do it all. I think he's faster. He's fast, and he's big, and he's still young enough. Like Josh Gordon, again, is 31 years old. Bryant has had a chance in the NFL. I think this guy could get back to the NFL. Like, I think all the other guys have had their moment in the NFL, and they're just trying to cash in on one last paycheck, even though the talent's still there. So I wouldn't sleep on this guy at all. Definitely a red zone threat.
Nope.
Is there any, how do we feel about the offensive lines? Do we think they're going to have the communication down? Or is that a worry because that's a worry for me in this league, how the communication for the offensive lines will work. Because I feel like there's a decent amount of defensive talent on the defensive line.
Yeah. I'm about to say, like, of the guys, like I've mentioned a few of the offensive players that, like, whenever I see a name pop out, like, I know I've seen this guy play probably in the NFL because I admit I do not watch a lot of college ball, but this, like, I've definitely noticed more defensive players.
I think to another fantasy man, Dadbot has a good point. This might be a week where you want to leave salary on the table.
Oh, yep.
And
exactly.
Just play the best guys.
Well, I mean, we're never against leaving salary.
You're not going to have to worry about salary this week.
Yeah. And if you do, I think you're playing it wrong.
Yeah, you shouldn't be just trying to jam in all of the high-priced guys.
Yeah, it's just not smart. So, any other smart takeaways you want to get from the Battlehawks?
Nope. Let's get through these because I want to start building a lineup. So, next team.
San Antonio. Just give me a second.
They are going with Jack Cohen. I believe he's the youngest, probably the least experienced NFL quarterback. But from all reports I'd heard, he had the most impressive camp of anyone at the XFL trial facility. Like, apparently this guy won the job quickly. There was never any doubt. He is definitely 100% the starting quarterback. And
that's what you want to hear.
Yeah, and given what we talked about with some of these other names, that could be huge. Now, I don't know if I believe it, but apparently San Antonio is really high on Jim.
Well, how much do you think that correlates with, like, Hines Ward being the coach here? He knows what it takes for a wide receiver and a quarterback being on the same wavelength. I think that's something he's going to really want early.
Also, like with Hines Ward being the coach, everyone's going to block. So, everyone, there's going to be holes for guys to run through, whether it's a wide receiver on a screen, whether it's the running back, Balaj, getting on the outside.
I love Balaj, personally. I think he has a lot of talent.
See, but with PMR, though, that's the only thing is, like, do you think he can catch passes?
I do not. But I can think this guy's talented and going to be a good player in this league and not want to play him.
But also to your point, Donnie, we can get on to the Gov's last point here is if we expect all these games to be like close and just like offensive line's not great, so that means time and protection might be limited. These games might be like sloppy and close and not as high scoring as you think. Like all the unders might hit. So
the opposite of the Super Bowl.
yeah, so you've got to get the touchdowns right, at least on some level.
And I think Balaj should be their goal line back.
He's the goal line back, right? So there is something to having a goal line back out there. Do you have any other takeaways you have?
Nope. I think you guys are hitting on everything great. All right. So last game. Seattle.
Yeah.
Seattle head coach.
Both teams full. Okay,
head coach Jim Haslett, but we have the OC that Logan was telling us about, June Jones. I don't know if you want to break that down.
Yeah, let me break that down, and you guys can handle player takes. So June, he wanted, when he coached in the USFL, he wanted his scheme, because it had included that in college. He's a big believer in passing, and he has a very like Mike Leach kind of like approach to it. He's going to do it his way. It's always been that way. He's an old man. He used to coach in like Hawaii. Like he's very idealistic, where he has this certain idea of how he wants to run things, and he does that. He literally does not have a tight end on the roster. Wanted to do the same thing with the USFL. They drafted the most wide receivers possible. Like this guy believes in like having wide receivers play running back, wide receivers basically play every position. Think of it like the Milwaukee Bucks. He's looking for Giannis, and he'll develop a physical freak. Like that's what he's looking for, is just physiques and physicality, his way, his style. And he doesn't really care if you're the most talented. He just wants people that fit his model. So with that being said, is we might see 90% passing from this team. We truly might. He does not like to run, or maybe in week one, everyone thinks this way, so he's going to totally flip the script. But I mean, we're talking Chip Kelly level arrogance with June. He's always been that way. So that's what I got on that. So
well, I mean, the way they built this roster, they have a lot of wide receiver depth.
Yeah.
And they have Josh Gordon, which I've seen. Like, I know Josh Gordon could have been one of the best receivers ever if he didn't get pinched for weed.
You do know, Gov, that Josh Gordon is, I think, the last player to play in the NFL at a substantial level before going over to this new XFL league.
He was on the Kansas City Chiefs this year.
No, he
like
actually,
before, like at least in the offseason.
Yeah, but he actually played right before the playoffs for the Tennessee Titans.
Yes, he was.
Like honestly,
he was literally in the NFL this year. Yes.
Yeah, he was on the field, like not just. He wasn't just like
Yeah, but even just in training is important. Like right. He's in shape. We know he's in shape.
Yes.
I'm just saying
he could end up being one of the better wide receivers in this league.
Correct.
And then we have Ben DiNucci. Like, I remember him on Dallas.
Oh yeah, he's shown slight flashes.
DiNucci's Pizza. We got DiNucci's Pizza.
I'm playing a lot of Ben DiNucci. I'm playing almost exclusively Ben DiNucci because I think Ben DiNucci can run.
Jay's 100% right. It's been a while since Josh Gordon was that guy.
Yeah.
Isn't this the 10th year since it's been that? I think
it might be now. 10 years. It legitimately. If you told me it's 10 years, I'd be like, damn, you're right, though.
Jay, what's the
over? Tebow was in the league. Yeah, Jay. I mean,
what's the over?
He's dead right. It's been a minute, a fat fucking minute.
But I mean, I've seen the talent flash here and there. I mean, when he was on the Patriots, he made some big plays. Now that's still another 4 years ago, but
yeah, I mean, okay. Right. He might be one of the older vets. True, but
yeah,
like, I liked Josh Gordon. I didn't have a problem with him.
No,
Like I thought he, if he wouldn't have been popped for weed and kept getting suspended for smoking marijuana, which they don't do in the NBA, but that's a whole other story to begin
they
with.
also
But
don't
like,
do it in the NFL anymore either. But
yeah, it's like if that didn't happen,
Is he
then he might have had a much better career. But like he still clearly had NFL talent to like be floating around rosters last year.
he's
So
almost 32.
I still think at that point he could be a top level talent in the XFL.
Yeah.
And then even if he's not, to your point earlier, they literally do have like 7 different wide receivers.
Yeah.
Maybe 8.
I want to play Ben DiNucci. If we don't build a Ben DiNucci lineup, I promise the people he is my personal quarterback. He's in almost every one of my lineups. I think he is. It's very similar to the Tavius Bryant Atman kind of conversation where it's like you take the guy that you think has the same upside, but sandwiched in between the high and the low guys, and you settle there. I don't want to pay it for AJ McCarron. He doesn't run. I'll pay for Ben DiNucci.
Can we take a timeout here and look at this lineup? Is this right? Are we missing something? I don't see a punter. Oh, okay. There we go.
Yeah.
he's got a good point, but he's shown the most talent, I think, at the professional level out of any of the players.
He has, but
it was a long time ago.
At what point, like we mentioned, did we just favor the young guy who might have played for, let's just say, Bowling Green, and it's like, I went to the Senior Bowl, I flashed out, and I still was a 6th-round draft pick because no one gave me any credit. I'm going to go to this league, and I'm going to smell what the Rock's cooking, and I'm going to become the head chef at this league, and I'm going to make a name for myself. Like
I think Jalen Redd's an interesting name as well at return man.
Yeah.
That's a nice speed guy there.
I mean,
he's small. If I'm not mistaken, he's really small.
Turpin literally was a Pro Bowler this year and made his hay off of an opportunity like that. So we're going to see players like that, and we got to embrace that variance. But talk about embracing, just so we don't go on for another 32 minutes without building a lineup. Let's embrace some of the speed so we can get onto the lineup. It's the most important part.
All right, let's hit this last team, and then we can build a lineup.
Yeah, if that's a Jalen Redd I'm thinking of, by the way, 5'9", 180 is what I last have him at.
Correct. Are they still the DC Defenders?
There's never too much DiNucci, by the way, Dad Bod. So what team is this? Washington? What?
I believe it's the DC Defenders in Washington.
Yes. Coach Reggie Barlow. I know nothing about Reggie Barlow. So I see that he played in the NFL.
Here's what I do know. I think there's 2 quarterbacks that could start for almost any team in this league, and they're on the secondary or backup roles for their teams. King, I believe, will be starting by week 2 or 3, and Huntley will be starting. Right now, they're both backups for week 1. I think Jordan Tamer is the biggest trap of anyone this entire slate. I think everyone's been living off of his rushing ability, that Tim Tebow magic, the fact he was on the Kansas City practice squad, and Patrick Mahomes accidentally said something nice about him once in a press conference. And ever since then, people have just fallen in love with this guy. I think he plays for the Battlehawks in the XFL last year. Like, he's shown flashes, but just like also shown terrible ability too.
I also have noticed, like, the when I've seen him play, he has had some real lows. He's had some decent highs, but
right.
Yeah, like he hasn't really shown out. He's just sort of been around in all these spring leagues.
It's very similar to Paxton Lynch, where it's like we've seen his good for like 5 minutes, but we've seen 50 minutes of bad. And so the ownership is going to be crazy on him. I want to stay away.
I don't think he will be very good for them. I've seen too much lows. If he was going to show out in a spring league, I think he would have by now. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is his time, but I'd rather just be wrong on that. I want to see him be good. You know, you want to see people succeed, but I just don't think it's in his future.
Hey, somebody might have a rock hard ad, but I'm with Dad about here. I'm gonna play the fantasy game, and if I'm playing DFS fantasy, I'm gonna fade ownership. And Jordan Ta'amu is probably the most recognizable quarterback's name, just because of all of his
I mean, outside of maybe AJ McCarron, but yeah.
Yeah, I think AJ McCarron's definitely the most recognizable with Alabama, obviously, and he did start a playoff game in the NFL.
I think with the 30-somethings, but I think like your generation, Donnie, the TikTokers, I think they know Jordan Ta'amu even more. I really do think that cup of coffee with the
my generation,
anyone who's a fan of the former XFL or USFL will know of Jordan Ta'amu.
Right. Well, I mean, in the young crowd, they just fall in love with these Russian quarterbacks, which you're not going to get with AJ McCarron. But that can be a lineup discussion conversation. So,
I was about to say you can switch over. Let's get to it.
That doesn't surprise me that Danucci's supposed to be the highest owned, but I think he's the highest owned for a reason, Jay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm playing Ben DiNucci, whether it's the highest one or not. I also do want to mention you guys should hit on the injuries. There are some injuries. There are a lot of cuts, so pay attention to your lineups as well. DraftKings also mentioned that some of the scoring is going to be behind, so please don't just like rip through the thing and think you won 5 minutes after the slate started. Well, let's start to build this lineup. What are some things that we have to do in this lineup? For sure, have to do
first, Logan.
Oh, I thought I was up. Good catch, Donnie. So, for anyone who doesn't know, because we have the most viewers possible, me and Gov and Donnie usually do these like big pillar lineups, and then we kind of do a draft off of it.
Let's take the comment off the screen as well, and Dad Bod, you're right about that. He did look solid with Dallas for a while, so, but that's why DiNucci's probably the highest owned. I think what we should first look at is the running back situation was Orlando with two running backs?
Do we play anyone from Orlando, and then who? I think that's
like that's the thing. Like, I think we can play one of these 50% owned dudes, like maybe two, but I really wouldn't want to do two. So, like, if we're playing like Martin, I don't think we can play DiNucci or Josh Gordon or maybe even Martavis Bryant. I don't know.
Jay mentioned that he thinks the ownership on Martin is going to be 54%.
Yeah.
Let's say it's 60%. Do we play him?
No.
I think you can still play him, but you can't play any other real chalky guy with him. There will be too many.
So I don't want to do that then, Gov, because if I'm going to play chalky, I'm going to play safe, right? That's the whole idea of chalk. And on DraftKings, the safest play is wide receiver because of the PMR.
So can we go to the running backs on that team in Orlando?
Yeah.
So my thing with this, there's only two running backs here.
Yeah.
We both agreed they're both probably getting snaps. One of them's all the chalk in the world. Why not play the backup and take the risk? He's so low priced.
Even if he is somewhat chalky, like he's still going to be less than Martin just based on name recognition.
See, that's something I could deal with doing. That I could at least see that.
Let's do that. Let's do that from a visualization standpoint. You just said you could see it working, and then we'll see what the lineup looks like and how much money we have left. If we want
Again, this is week one. We might leave a few thousand on the table. Who knows?
Right. I also want to mention just quickly, I love Max as well. That was another running back option that I would have pushed for had we not went there. So we'll go with Devin just to be a bit different here. So Donnie gave us his pillar. We got to think about this. Gov, is there anything we're missing here we got to think about from a structural standpoint before we just start naming off positions or names?
Well, I mean, if we're going to play this NFL style, we probably should figure out which game we want to stack.
Seattle.
I would agree. I kind of like Seattle.
I mean, dude, he almost won with PJ Walker already, Jones, and then he's actually running his offense this time. They're not forcing him to play tight ends. Like this just has like the sneakiest, and people don't like to wait for their money. Like they want to see themselves winning. So like the later game usually goes lesser owned. That's just a fantasy fact. So who from this game do we want to make sure we play?
Well, that's the thing. If we're going to stack that game, we have to figure out what side are we going to stack. And like one side has DiNucci, who might be super chalky. Yeah. The other side has Tamu, who will probably be less chalky, but we know what he does.
I think we play Ben DiNucci.
I would lean Ben DiNucci. He has the most recent NFL quarterback experience, if I'm not mistaken.
He does, and he's young enough that he's going to run.
Right. I like that. Even if we played him alone or with the cheaper receiver, like their third receiver, I think that makes sense. If you wanted to get different in that way.
So I think like if we do that, we can't play Josh Gordon.
Okay, I was just going to say, if you give us a tiebreaker on DiNucci, you pick the we don't even got to bring it back. Like I say, we could just play the most talented person. But I think given the passing usage of the Dragons, we might want to spit some fire here with a receiver.
Right. Now, I think we need to fade Josh Gordon. So if we look at the depth chart.
Yeah. And I can bring that back up.
Hold on. I might have gotten rid of it. Give me a sec.
Because DraftKings depth chart's a bit different. So I want to make sure that we get the most accurate.
Well, while you're doing that, I mean, I have a thing that I think we should think about defensively as well, if we want to just hit on that really quick. We can all agree Vic Beasley's going to be the most talented defensive player. Why not just get the most talented defensive player on the field in our team?
No, I agree with that. I agree. But I do want to hit really quickly on Jay's point, too, because I think it's a good point to go. First point was, even if DiNucci is high owned, like the percentage, if he's high owned, the highest likelihood is that people pair it with Gordon because they're like, DiNucci played for the Cowboys. Cowboys are the most, famous team in America. No matter what sport you're talking about, the Cowboys are a recognizable name. They always get TV ratings. These things matter when we're looking for small edges. People see DiNucci. They know Josh Gordon. They're going to pair those two at an extremely high rate. So even being like just playing one of them, I do think makes you different enough, even if they are still higher owned than you might like. I still think like that's going to make you different enough.
All right. So I agree. So if we fade Josh Gordon, we see the other three starting wide receivers, since they don't really start a tight end.
Yep.
Are Shakur Pearson, Blake Jackson, and Jawan Green. Now, my first instinct after looking at this is Pearson's also punt returning.
He is. That's my point to his speed. I was like, let's go with the speed option.
Well, I was going to say I don't want the double duties guy.
Okay.
Well, I think we go to either Jackson or Green as the receiver instead of Gordon.
Well,
and we might end up doing both. We very well might have ended doing both. We might double stack DiNucci if we think he's going to pass that a lot.
Well, I would say I recognize Green's name, so that's where I would lean, just because I recognize. But that doesn't mean it's a safe pick.
Do you recognize it? Because I do not. Where do you recognize it from?
I cannot remember. I know I've heard the name before. Maybe it's a different Jawan Green.
It looks like he's in a Titans uniform to me. And I know football, but I don't. I like it when I'm wrong about things. I like it when I'm challenged.
I'm looking it up right now.
So it'd be good, but I do think it is Green. I've heard some things about him. I'd be lying if I was like, oh yeah, I remember him playing, 15 snaps in the NFL. That'd be a total lie.
Yeah, undrafted free agent for the Falcons. That sounds about right. Yeah, obviously playing all.
So he's young. Though. 2020.
was when he was on the Falcons. He's 6 foot, average size guy. 187 I don't love, but
What about Pearson as we break the tie here? Because I would probably go Pearson, but you guys didn't.
Well, I will
like
say,
I said, I really didn't want the guy playing double duties. Like it's
Yeah.
the same. Like if you're gonna be the punt returner, how much are you actually going to be wide receiver 1, 2?
Fair enough. So let's go Green
So-
for now.
Now,
well, I will say,
Turpin did it a little bit, so maybe, but I think I would go probably. I think Blake is my pick.
Blake from Seattle.
Blake Jackson. Yeah, I believe
just
that's
off
where
a
he
quick
was from,
search
yeah.
of Green, as a senior at the University of Albany, he broke records for receptions, receiving yards, and touchdown receptions. So I don't know if that sways you at all.
I'm not even seeing who you want to play here, Guff. Who was it? Blake?
Yeah, it says B Jackson.
Oh yeah. Okay, Blake. Yeah, I got you. I was looking for that double alliteration name.
Blake is a small guy as well at only 5'11". I don't know. Just the more we know.
Maybe he's the slot receiver.
Yeah,
Maybe
he might be their slot guy.
Which-
Undrafted in 2018. He played in the CFL.
Yeah, I actually recognize him now because I did play some CFL and
Actually, he played for the Houston Roughnecks in 2019 or 2020.
Yeah.
Sorry.
which also was coordinated by Judd. So
In his 5 games, he caught 5 passes for 50 yards and 1 touchdown. I don't know if I'm just bringing a little bit of information here.
so let's do that.
No, yeah, it's good to know. Good to know. Again,
So-
I think I'd take Jackson. Like you could maybe talk me into Pearson, but like you guys would both have to say you want to play.
No, I'm with you now, because I think people are going to sleep on him. I don't think people are going to look that far down.
So,
But can we eat some chalk now?
well, 1 second. In the CFL, Jackson had a promising training camp in 2021 prior to suffering a season-ending injury. He re-signed with them in 2022, but it says nothing about him playing. So,
But
again,
if you're going to be that hurt and they keep signing you back, they must see some kind of talent. Like there must be some kind of glimmer of hope there. I like it.
Maybe.
And I haven't heard much about it, and I researched a ton of it. Maybe Jay could lean us in a direction here, but I think.
well, Jay was talking about Green.
Yeah, I know.
1,300 receiving, 17 touchdowns. That's
Green has the talent, so like he again, I would be fine with either one of those two.
From what we've seen, like the little bit of things I just brought up, I would trust the guy but I would
Can
trust
I
Green
play
more.
my favorite player, though? The guy that I think is going to be, he's the highest on receiver, but I think he has the chance to go to the lower zone because everyone else recognizes more names for the higher.
You got to change the screen again, but yeah.
Yeah, let's get back to the lineup.
Why not play this guy? Like, give me a reason not to. He's the most expensive. He's probably going to go the least owned, but I think he has the most talent.
I've never heard of this guy, to be honest.
Look him up. Look up his NFL stats, Donnie. I bet you'll be impressed. Like, we didn't even got to look up his college stats. This guy did it in the NFL. Yeah. Similar to, I'm trying to think of the guy's name. It'll come to me. But go, anything about this guy you want to mention? Like
6'4".
Yeah, very, very Mike Williams. Like I think of like a poor man's Mike Williams. Very contest catch heavy guy, but has solid hands. Like very solid hands.
Interesting that he was a 7th round pick. Not that does anything. 2019 stats: 5 for 116 on 10 targets.
But again,
not bad.
A lot of these guys that play in the NFL have such high name recognition, but are older that they're going to carry the ownership. I think this is the one guy that has like the NFL experience that's going to go way lower owned than he should.
I think I agree with that. And like, again, I have preliminary projections, and let's see exactly where he's at in these, which, again, I will put about as much trust in this as I can throw a feather.
And, I just want to say, obviously, we're all working with very little knowledge, but, so we're going to have to do a little bit more on the fly research just to make sure we're giving out the best product, I think.
The best product, right.
So that's, we might take a little bit longer, less efficient than what you're used to with the NFL, but I think that's where the fun is. We're all learning at the same time.
Week 1, we got to figure it out.
Yeah. And I think it's, we're trying to have the conversation as well with the viewers. So everyone wants to learn about the sport a little bit if you're watching at this point, I'm sure.
I agree.
Yes.
So,
all right.
Anything else we need to hit? I know you mentioned defenses. It was the Roughnecks that Vic Beasley played for, correct?
I think it was the Vipers. I'll double check.
Yeah, the Vipers. The Vipers.
It was the Vipers. Let's select them in then, because we both like Vic Beasley. And
I think Vic Beasley. I've already said it, but Vic Beasley's the most talented player. We've seen him have a very high sack season. I expect him to get a sack this game. We've talked about the offensive lines probably not having the best communication. I'd be shocked if he doesn't get a sack this game, or at least pressure a quarterback.
Can we just play the second best wide receiver in Bryant?
I wouldn't mind that. He's the top projected guy in my stuff.
Play the two Raiders, the most, the two Raider players with that minute in Bryant. Like I said, we mentioned it with Woodson. Like, he knows Bryant. He brought Bryant in for a reason. I could see Bryant getting like 15 targets, like Devontae Adams level of usage in week 1. I think fading Josh Gordon might be the move, though. I think that could be.
I really like the idea of fading Josh Gordon because it was said by Jay, like, if DiNucci and Gordon fail, your lineup's pretty much done.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are going to have DiNucci and Gordon.
Yeah, they're going to have that combination. The fact that we don't have it paired, I think, is big.
Is there any name that we don't have here at this point that we're like...
Basher would be a name I'd mention. Because the man is 6'6", almost 6'7". I think you have to consider that. Just for the size and the physics. Like, there's not many corners that I feel like could even match up with that guy.
What's his name?
TJ Basher. Played for the Cowboys, I believe, as well.
I'm assuming, yeah, it was 6'6". He's skinny at 215, I feel like.
He is. But, like, when we're talking about defenses that don't have the athletes to cover, like, this could be.
He's only 24. I mean, he hasn't had much opportunities at a pro level.
He hasn't. But like I say, when you're talking about the pros, you're talking about guys that can match up with him. I don't know how many people can match up with a 6'6" receiver who is young enough
in this league
and hungry. Yeah, and hungry enough. Is there any objections to putting him in and seeing where we're at?
I mean, let's see what the salary's at. I don't want it to be egregious, but
it's 5,000. So what we could do is get off of the running back. And
we could
play any running back we want,
other than Martin.
No, we could play Martin if we wanted to.
We could, but for ownership reasons, I wouldn't want to.
Right.
Like, we were playing Darrington as the pivot. So, like, if we get off of him, we're still not going to go to Martin. But I could see then going to, like, again, any other running back. Yes. This would be
mine because Jay mentioned it, and now it seems like I'm piggybacking off him. But we can all eat high off the hog here. This guy used to be a former wide receiver, so it doesn't surprise me that the Dragons would find a way to get another wide receiver on the field, even if he is technically playing running back for them. And it would give us another pairing with DiNucci. He's more expensive than Martin, and we know Martin's going to have the ownership. I would lean this way. Do you guys have any other?
I don't have an objection to that. If
Nope.
you feel like he's going to get targets, I also want to get back on the TJ Vasher thing. I think it's interesting. He was a redshirt sophomore, had a great year, 600 yards, 7 touchdowns. Junior, he 42, 500 yards, 6 touchdowns. Senior year, didn't really play much, and got hurt with the Cowboys. Never played with them. Never really got a shot, and that was it. So,
and he's still young.
He's still young. I mean, I'm 100% fine with a shot in the dark like that. He was a touchdown machine in the middle of his college career. I like the play there. I feel like we got another good red zone threat in Bryant. So I like the lineup. So Aitman's another big receiver. We want a lot of big receivers, but I feel like when we're looking for points in targets, if there's good contest from the defense, that's probably where the ball's going.
When we talk about the running back position, you want guys that you think are going to be in the red zone. Going with the big body receivers, they don't got to have the big breakaway speed. You just need them to get the 7 points. And I think we split the difference. Like, we're not going Martin. We're going to a guy that's a bit more expensive, so you know his ownership is going to go lower. We didn't go Gordon, but we went for somebody that's more expensive, and Atman, who will be lesser owned because of that. So, like, any other takeaways, I like this lineup.
I think it's pretty good.
I
think we made just enough pivots. Like, depending on what tournament you throw it in, this looks like a really good lineup.
Well, just transparency. I want to mention thanks for Jay and Double J of our Discord channel letting us host this on their channel for the first week. Hopefully, we made them proud of us, and we'll continue that partnership going forward. 2, I have $12 on the line. I always like to be transparent. I'm using 2 lineups. I'm sticking to my convictions, and I'm going to have some fun with it. It's all money that, again, I find disposable. But I'm not doing a whole bunch of variants to try to get perfect. I'm just sticking to things that I think are going to happen, and then we'll wait and see if they actually do. Any other, advice, takeaways, things to look forward to, anything at all?
Yeah, all I have to say is, thank you guys for all the comments. It definitely added another layer to this stream. It was fun. We're all going through the same process here of we don't know.
I always love Jason's information.
Oh, he came in with great information for us.
Yeah. Always love him. He's the man right there.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it, guys. I know everyone else does as well. So.
And that's fully transparent because me and Gov already knew what to expect from Jay. And again, giving us this platform is tremendous honor for me. But for Donnie, who doesn't even know him, to recognize that very quickly, that speaks to how good of a person you are, how good of a community you built. And so congratulations on that. Again, thanks for the opportunity. Again, this one went a bit long, guys, but I want to mention quickly that once we get projections and we start to see some of these users, we'll be able to get to this feedback a lot quicker. But it's almost like one of those things when you're not used to digesting this much information, we of course got to take our time because we're trying to give you guys the best lineup. So
it's also another reason we do it the night before, give you time to digest, and you'll still have time to make some lineups tomorrow before the lock.
Correct. So good night, guys. Again, thanks to the guys that Raised the Roof for hosting us tonight. Hopefully we can continue that relationship because it was fun. Anything else? I don't think so. Good night.
Good night.
Oh, yep. Let's win this money with this lineup.
Please.
I like it.
Good night. Good luck.